Welcome to SSO Coaching 76. Today we have a special guest, Sam Kabert. Sam is a TEDx speaker, a best-selling author, a former Silicon Valley entrepreneur, and who built a seven-figure business and achieved time freedom. And I mean, all of us in this business know that we want time freedom. But he did all of that only to realize that he still felt empty, burned out, emotionally disconnected, and walked away from success to find his real fulfillment. Now, through his Breathe, and that's an acronym, method and soul life balance philosophy, Sam helps high performers reset their nervous system, clear their brain fog, and reconnect with their purpose. His message has reached over 100,000 people, and he is now on my podcast, so he can talk about it a little bit more. He's certified in breath work. I'm not really sure what NLP MER practitioner is, but we will get into that whenever we start talking to Sam. And he also is the host of the Top 3% Soul Seeker podcast. So he actually has his own podcast. At the end, we will ask Sam to tell us all about where we can find him and where everybody can reach out. And hi, Sam. Welcome.
Hey, Kathleen. Thanks so much for having me and stoked to see where this conversation's going to take us.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. So I just introduced you with your little short bio. So why don't you give us a little journey through your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'll catch you guys up to speed because that's going to be too long, and we can just see what's interesting to you. But I built my business up to a seven-figure business, like you mentioned in the bio, in Silicon Valley, and hit all my goals. Was working less than 4 hours a day. I'd always wanted work-life balance, and I achieved that elusive state of work-life balance. And I felt empty. I was like, how can I feel this way, right? Like I have everything that I ever want in so many different ways. So much was going on in terms of accolades and materialistic success. Then that led me to really listening to the whispers of my soul, which led me to a path of spirituality and plant and earth medicine and all these different things. And I had a spiritual awakening, and I completely transformed my life and moved away from Silicon Valley to the beaches of Santa Cruz, about an hour away. And yeah, I just went deeper and deeper, became a men's work facilitator, yoga instructor, breathwork practitioner, certified in hypnotherapy, NLP, MER, all these different modalities. And now what I focus on is helping other high performers to really learn more about emotional health, because I think we get wrong in terms of thinking about mental health, because the key is emotional health. And just so that, people get the tools to regulate their nervous system and reprogram their subconscious so that we can live an aligned life that's full of joy, positivity, vitality, all the things that we want.
How did you, I mean, because that's one heck of a left turn. How
hmm
did you even find that?
Yeah, so I was doing this was back in 2019, and it was like January, February, and I was doing LinkedIn prospecting for my company at the time, a promotional products brand merch company. And this woman got on a call with me. I thought she was interested in like buying some swag, like brand merchandise. And she was telling me that I'm like a very spiritual person. And I was just thinking in my head, like, I don't know where you're getting this from, lady, like, right? Like, and I was also thinking, like, hey, I thought we were going to talk about you buying from me, like, right? But there was something in her words, in her energy that just resonated with me. And I was also in the middle of a numbing depression. And she invited me to something called a cacao ceremony. At the time, I heard cacao and I heard ceremony, and I was like, cacao, you mean like chocolate or something? You mean cocoa? And ceremony, what do you mean like ceremony? And then I asked her a little bit more. She told me a little bit more about it. I told a friend about it, and she was familiar with what it was. And basically, like cacao is the most natural form of chocolate and people do these ceremonies as like a ritual to connect with the plant, the earth. It's not psychedelic or anything like that. It can be very heart opening. We did some breath work, things like that. But it turned me me onto a whole different world that I didn't even know existed. And my friend that I ended up going to this cacao ceremony with back in 2019, she mentioned that she was going to do ayahuasca. And are you familiar with
Yeah,
ayahuasca?
I
Yeah.
am. I don't
So
know if my listeners are, but I am.
it's a plant medicine, so meaning it's a psychedelic. It's completely from the plants in Amazon, and it's very much for healing, and it's a rite of passage for sure. So my friend
And so
ended up
you
doing.
you use ayahuasca to go on a journey, like what is it, a self-discovery journey, correct?
I mean, it's one of the most strongest forms of psychedelics that it is out there. It's like going all the way in. It's taking the red pill, like in the movie The Matrix.
Okay.
Basically,
Okay.
you're drinking like this tea essentially, and it is taking the metaphoric red pill for your listeners that have seen The Matrix, right? You don't really come back from that. Like you do that, and there's like you just are going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Like you can't be in resistance. To be in resistance, you're going to be in a lot of pain. So you have to get to that point of acceptance. So that's a whole nother thing. So I ended up doing ayahuasca, had that entire like spiritual awakening. And that's why the left turn, the 180, and just making all these massive changes in my life because I was just shown by the medicine all these different ways that I was out of alignment. And that's why I changed my life. And I couldn't be more grateful. Here I am 6.5 years later, you know?
That's awesome. I mean, I'm a spiritual person. I'm not a, staunch religious person. I'm spiritual. I feel the energies and everything like that in the world. And it's I've learned how to block it and shield it because
Hmm.
in the corporate world that has no place,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But there's a lot of us that want to remain in the corporate world, and there's a lot of us that, like you, want to walk away. So you had your left turn, and you went down the spiritual, roller coaster. How hard was it for you to embrace like the yoga and the breath work and just literally slowing down? Because that's all about, finding your core and finding your inner, balance. And I mean, coming from Silicon Valley, being a seven-figure business entrepreneur, you were hustling.
Hmm. Hmm.
How
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
slow down?
I didn't have another choice. You know, like Blake Mycoskie is one of the people that I really look up to, and I happened to see a reel by his today. And for anyone that's not familiar with him, he's the founder of Tom Shoes, and he started Tom Shoes, which created the whole one for one model. The idea of every time you buy a pair of shoes, they donate a pair of shoes in need. And within like I think 7 years or something, he built his company up to being able to the point sell 50% and exit for $300 million. And last year, he was very vocal on like his suicidal ideation, his depression, all the things. And I just saw a video from him today on his social media saying like how happy he is that he was able to move through that depression, how grateful he was, and even though like how difficult it was. And I tell that story because that's very similar to me, except like I didn't play at that scale, that large that he did, right? It was a different arena that I was in. But my story's similar. I think I was able to work through it a lot quicker than him. And for people that are battling depression or any of these severe things, even complex PTSD that's resurfacing, you have no other choice, right? Because we get to a point of understanding at some point, like, wow. I can either be in resistance and create this continual feeling in my nervous system that's being mirrored back to me in these experiences, or I can really lean into like the shadow work, the doing the work of like personal development and spiritual development and be like, what's here? Because I don't want to be in resistance anymore because it's too painful. And there's the analogy of like, coaching and group coaching things and retreats and masterminds is the word I was looking for, where it's almost like a fast pass at Disneyland, where like if you
Mhm.
work with a coach or a mastermind, it's a fast pass. I don't want this to come across wrong, but when you work with plant and earth medicine, that is to say psychedelic therapy, and you do that with intention and a well-vetted guide, it can be like a fast track or a fast pass to your healing. And that was the case for me. That experience with ayahuasca and some other medicines as well, like just highlighted so many things that I needed to change in my life. And because I have the background of doing things, I was like, oh, I wrote a book called The Written Goal. Like, I know how to take action. Now that I have a roadmap, I can do these things. It's up to me. The hardest part about the healing journey or the spiritual journey of going from doing to being isn't about doing the things, it's about knowing what you should be doing.
Yeah. I mean, my coaching method has always been to lift someone up. But if they're so stuck in their own head to where they cannot see their own worth, there's only so much that I can do. Like a journey with that you went on, that was pure self-discovery. You didn't have a choice but to be confronted with yourself, basically.
Mhm.
And that's the I do believe if I know the medicine correctly, that's the whole point to ayahuasca is for you to face yourself and face your own, I guess you could say, inner demons.
Yeah, that's one way to put it, but in yes, and in terms of like coaching, like now that I have all these modalities and I've done like all that work over the last 6 years, and the clients I've been working with the past 3 to 4 years, on this path, but really being like solidified now with these modalities that I'm trained in and certified in, it's like NLP and MER are so huge. NLP stands for neuro linguistic programming. That's what Tony Robbins is doing. NLP is huge. Anyone that's in business, like an entrepreneur, executive, a speaker, a coach, whatever it might be, like it would totally behoove that person to take a 4 day intro basic class to NLP just to learn about it because that's all about rewiring the subconscious mind. Now, MER is mental emotional release. When you become like a master practitioner of NLP, depending on the school, at least the one I went through, I became a master practitioner of not just NLP, but MER. What MER is about, that's mental emotional release, is getting to the root of the issue. So, one of the things that I do with my clients is called a breakthrough session. It's like a 6 hour intensive that typically will break up in a couple of days. And what a lot of the work that we're doing, besides the release work, is scrambling the subconscious mind or unconscious mind. It's the same thing. So, we're scrambling it so that it's not so much about like traditional coaching where like we're trying to instill motivation or inspiration or even like talk therapy to guide someone to see it for themselves. It's like we're going straight to the supercomputer of your mind and we're going to give it a complete reboot and reset. So that's why I leverage MER, NLP stacked with nervous system regulation through breath work because that's how we can get to the root and then really solidify, lock it in with teaching them how to regulate their nervous system with breath work so that they can sustain it and integrate it on a day-to-day basis. Does that make sense?
It, in my corporate brain, yes, it does. It's like a lean project, how you bring, different things together. In this respect, it's different modalities you're bringing together, and you basically go through and you get to the root of the problem, which is not originally what the original problem you thought it was. So,
Mhm.
so you always end up at a completely different root problem. So, and then you've discovered, and that's where you can actually fix everything from there.
Yeah, totally. Like one of the things that's very common in this modality of NLP and MER, that's neuro linguistic programming and mental emotional release, NLP, MER, is talking about how clients come to us with like a presenting problem. That might be like, hey, I'm really stressed at work, or hey, I've been dealing with a lot of brain fog, or I just experienced so much anxiety. And then when we do our session together, before we get into the root work or the release work, we get from the presenting problem to the greater problem. And the greater problem a lot of times is like, I don't love myself. I don't feel safe to receive. I don't feel worthy, like something like that. Whereas, like, the presenting problem is like, I'm just so stressed or I have brain fog. And it's like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, we can work through it, but we gotta go deeper, right?
You got to find the root of the problem.
Yeah, that's it.
Because especially in that respect, if you don't find the root of the problem, all you're doing is basically just treating the symptoms instead of actually treating the disease, I guess you could say.
Exactly. And that's the problem with most mental health solutions. Like, I'm just going to nerd out for a second. Is that cool?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
like
ahead.
mental health is all about like quieting the mind. Most of the time, when people are talking about mental health, they understand on an unconscious level what they're talking about is the language of the mind, which is thoughts. They're like, we gotta help you to just like feel more clear. So we're gonna get you to meditate so that anytime a thought comes up, you can just let that thought drift by. Or we're going to teach you how to journal so that you can process what's coming up. And it's like, yeah, that's cool, but that's more like compartmentalization. That's a band-aid. Emotional health is really what we need to rise up because it's cool and it's great and it's inspiring that mental health is being prioritized so much in these recent years. But the next wave is emotional health. And this is why anytime we have a thought, that sends a signal to the body. And that signal to the body turns into a feeling. Now, because most of us don't feel safe in our body, that is to say, our nervous system, we disassociate, we distract, we numb, we suppress, we repress. So we don't allow ourselves to feel that feeling. And what happens is when that thought gets sent to the body and that creates a feeling, there's a chemical reaction. And that brings up all those feelings. Now, science teaches us that our body has a 90-second physiological response when we experience an emotion, meaning that if we allow ourselves to feel the energy of that emotion, it will move through us. But because most of us distract, numb, disassociate, avoid that feeling, it gets sent back up to the mind or the brain, I should say, and then we get caught in thought loops. So then mainstream society says, hey, we're all just thinking too much. We're overthinking, we're stressed, and we're feeling so much anxiety. Let's teach people how to calm their minds. And that's the worst advice because that just keeps us in the cycle of being in our mind, clearing the mind, putting a band-aid on, compartmentalizing versus teaching how to feel what's coming up through regulating your nervous system so that it can actually move through you in real time.
So going back to what you were saying, it with the breath work and everything like that. I mean, okay, so women, and I can speak for women because I am one.
Yeah.
We are emotional creatures.
Hmm.
We are always emotional. I mean, God, the heavens know. I wear my emotions on my face. You will know if I'm pissed off. You will know if I am annoyed, and you will know if I'm happy. Just the
Hmm.
way I am. But what I try to teach within my coaching, what I try to stress, I should say, within my coaching to my clients, to the people that I mentor, is before you actually make a response, you need to breathe.
Hmm.
Just take a second, breathe through it. You can't, I mean, it allows you to step back and reset for a second before you just emotionally blurt out or word vomit or whatever to someone in an emotional response. And if you breathe before you respond, it actually gives your brain that time to wait a second. We don't want to respond like, oh my God, what are you doing? We want to respond with, okay, well, I understand that this is what you blah blah blah, and then you can go on from there. It's a completely different response, and it creates a completely different response for the person that you're actually interacting with. So, how would you say that your NLR, or I'm sorry, NLP, MER practice, along with the breath work, helps your clients to attain that level
Hmm.
when like I said, women, we are emotional creatures. How do you stem that or delay that emotional reaction. Instead of us blowing up at our husband, we take a breath, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. Yeah, this is what I teach. And, funny enough, about 65 to 70% of my audience is women in the age range of about 45 to 65. So, very familiar with this demographic as well. And in the book that I published last year, my sixth book, it's called To Overcome the Overwhelm. And the subtitle is The Six Step Breath Process to Access Inner Peace. So the acronym BREATH is how we do that. It's great to know about the 90-second rule and be like, oh, okay. So if we allow ourselves to feel this trigger that's coming up in the moment, we can process it in 90 seconds. But what we actually do, that's what your question is here. And that's what the breath method solves. So basically, it would look like this. And this is super high level. Like, this is what I teach on stage when I'm hired to give a keynote or a presentation or facilitate a workshop in a corporate setting. This is what I wrote a book on. So, I mean, we're just going over this real quick, but you experience that trigger, right? The first thing is noticing that comes up. To your point of responding, the difference between responding and reacting is the response is a choice. It's conscious, it's intentional, you understand. The reaction is unconscious, and that's that behavior we want to rewire and that we want to reset. So, as soon as you notice that trigger, that heightened sensitivity in your nervous system, then celebrate the fact that you just built awareness around it. That's number one, because where most women get stuck is in a shame cycle. It's like, oh no, I'm doing it again. I thought I was further along. I can't believe I regressed. And instead of that, we want to have that mindset shift of being like, oh my God, this is amazing. I just built awareness that I'm feeling how I'm feeling. Right? So that's so cool. That's what I'm trying to do. Now, what am I going to do from here? The three themes of the breath process are breathe, feel, think intentionally. So it'll look like this. Once you build that awareness, the first step, the B in breath, breathe to slow down. There's different ways to breathe. Just long, slow, deep inhales and exhales is fine. Just focus on activating rest and digest. Number two, the R in breath, relax to feel. You really want to prime your nervous system to feel. You can't just go from a triggered, heightened state to be like, okay, now I'm ready to feel, right? So you could even say in your mind, like, relax. Relax, just like that in your mind, and allow yourself to feel the signal it sends to your body that you start to calm down. You're feeling relaxation because your nervous system and your body know when it hears that word relax. So that's priming you to feel. Number three, the E in breath. Energy to reveal. Emotions are energy in motion. The 90-second rule backs that up. So, this is where we do our shadow work. And all shadow work means is to make the unconscious conscious, basically, what we're not aware of to bring it to the surface. So, if the third step is energy to reveal, we just say, hey, what is this energy revealing to me? What is the lesson? What's being revealed? Just simple questions like that. That's typically where we're like, no, 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 I don't want to see that thing. And this goes back to what I said before about resistance, and that keeps us stuck and in more pain. We have to accept it. So the fourth step in breath is accept to surrender. Now is when I might teach a little bit more advanced breathwork techniques to help turn off the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking mind, so that you can get into the limbic system, the emotional brain. But basically, we're just allowing ourselves to feel safe enough so that we can accept what's being revealed to us. And then the last phase, number five, the T in breath, that's transform into empowering beliefs. Now we're going to alchemize it. We have to do our shadow work to earn the right to invoke the power of positive thinking, right? Because a lot of mainstream media or mental health is like, just always feel positive. And that's just a band-aid compartmentalization. That's why we're doing this deep work first, so that we can allow it to move through us, get to the root. Finally, the H in breath, habits to integrate. And that's just asking yourself, okay, as a result of what just came up, what actions, habits, or behaviors will I take moving forward? A quick little example of this is I was working with a client when I was developing this framework, and she was putting on a 10,000 person music festival, and she was very stressed. It was about 2 weeks before I taught her the framework. We jumped on a few calls just to run through some things. She was able to regulate her state in real time so that she wasn't, transferring that stress to her team, and they end up having a really impactful event. And she attributed it all to the breath method.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I have an example of something similar. I mean, I didn't know about your breath method at that point in time, but I knew about my own emotional response. I was in a situation in within the job world, and something was taken away from me, put it that way. And it didn't make any sense, and the person that it was given to completely didn't make any sense, and it was done out of spite by the person that did it. And instead of having an emotional response, which is exactly what he was wanting, I stopped. Now, granted, yes, I recognized that emotional flush because I was pissed. God, I was pissed. And I actually felt the heat in my ears.
Mhm.
Because I was like, like steam coming from your
Yeah.
ears. This was that time. I actually felt the heat in my ears. But I took a couple of breaths and I just looked at him and I said, okay, I understand. And the look on his face was everything that I needed
Mhm.
because it was just like she's not mad, she's not yelling. I can almost guarantee you that the situation, had I emotionally responded, would have gone very, very differently. And I think to myself that it hearing you talk about your method and your process, everything like that, I stopped long enough to actually recognize. And I didn't have an emotional response. So I didn't have to go through that cycle of embarrassment and oh my God, and the shame and everything like that because I didn't have that emotional response. I just had a response.
Mhm.
But it took me a second to get there. But it was I guess you could say a natural pause.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that, Kathleen. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. That's exactly what I'm talking about too. And it's interesting to look at something like that where that you're labeling as like a natural pause, right? Or like because we can look at those experiences and look at back at it and be like, wow, look how great I'm doing. I'm so proud of myself for doing this. Now I want to do more of it. And then it's like it makes things super easy because I know like introducing a new framework with 6 steps can seem like a lot if you're new to this type of work. But look at what Kathleen just shared. Like once you start to put the reps in, it's like, oh, 90-second rule. That means I can process in 90 seconds. Oh, what do? I breathe, I feel, I think intentionally. Those are the 3 themes, right? You don't have to remember everything else. Like doing the deep dive to understand it is great to get you started. That's going to give you a roadmap. You're going to consciously understand it. But as you start to put the reps in, it's not like I expect people to like slow down and be like, did I do every single step in the breath method? It's like, no, like it just happens automatically because it's embedded into your unconscious behavior.
That is absolutely awesome. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book? You called it The Overcome the Overwhelm.
Yes, that's right. Overcome the overwhelm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and what brought that about?
Yeah, I mean, 2019 was that time in my life. I built up the business. I left Silicon Valley in 2022. 3 years later, I wrote my fourth book, Soul Life Balance. And 2022 was such a beautiful year in so many ways. And not that I felt like I figured it all out, but I was definitely like really really in my flow. Next year, 2023, my entire life imploded, and it was the one of the most challenging times in my life. And that led me to just doing the work even deeper and deeper. And that's when I started to do the breath method for myself. It wasn't called the breath method at the time, but I had a different way of going about it. And it was a little clunky and it was a little chunky, but it was working. And I started sharing it with clients and it was working for them. And then that's when I packaged it into something that was like repeatable, and that became the breath method. And then a few friends kind of reflected back to me like, hey, maybe it's time for your next book. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And I went to Bali. I was doing another training out there and I was doing some journaling and different things. And this book just started to come through me. And I wrote the whole book in about a month, which is pretty fast,
Wow.
even though it's not a huge book. But yeah, it's all about the breath method. It's not a memoir. It's not like about what happened because that's not important. And as much as I do share, like very vulnerable and transparent things. This specific one was just not something I felt I could share at the time, which I'm happy I didn't. I focused more on the solution. Like, hey, this thing happened. I'm not going to waste your time talking about what this thing was, but I will teach you how I've overcome it and so many other people have as well. So the book is just the breath method really expanded more.
Well, it doesn't really matter about the thing that happened because everybody has a thing that happens and everybody's thing is different. It's
Mhm.
about what you did to overcome it. That's the point. And
Yeah.
I like that. Can you tell us where we could actually pick that book up?
Yeah, it's Amazon. That's the easiest way. Overcome the overwhelm. One thing I'll mention too is there's two types of overwhelm. There's internal and there's external overwhelm. Sorry. There's internal and there's external overwhelm. And we get caught up, especially high performers and in corporate with external overwhelm. That's like obligations, responsibilities, the bills, all the things, right? And then that creates the chaos state within. So then we're like, I don't have time to do my meditation. I don't have time for breath work. I don't have time for any of this being or mindful stuff, all this woo stuff, right? You're like, I just got to figure out my life. That keeps us stuck. Because the truth is, even quantum physics teaches this the outer world is a reflection of our inner world. So when we take the time to go within and regulate our inner world, our inner overwhelm, then everything in the outer world starts to just fall into place. And we're coming from a clear mindset where we can actually take action. So important to know there is internal and external overwhelm, and we make the changes in the internal overwhelm, not the external.
Yeah, we have to, I guess you could say, separate them. I mean, everybody has stress. Everybody has stress in their life. I mean, like my coaching is based upon strength, significance, and opportunity. You need to be able to recognize your own strength, and there can be a lot of external factors that can actually hinder you in understanding that you do have strength. There can be things like external things that can hold you down. In my business, which is transportation, there are four different types of women. And the first type of woman in the business, I used to be that woman. And that's the one that keeps her head down. She doesn't do what she doesn't step outside the line. She just does her job. Nobody sees her. There's so many external factors that are repressing her that she doesn't even realize that she cannot see her own strength to be able to stand up and actually embrace herself. And unfortunately, you get into a lot of women in my business get into this pattern because it is a very male dominated industry. So you have to do certain things as I hate to say it like that, but as a woman, in order to be recognized, one of them is basically you need to learn everything you freaking can about the damn business, and that way, whenever you come to the table, nobody can discount you, But you have to be able to embrace that within yourself and see that strength in order to do that. And then once you actually can see your own strength, that's when you can actually embrace, recognize that significance that you can actually bring to the table, that you can bring to your business. I mean, you have to find that passion, because nobody's going to, I guess you could say, embrace anything unless they're passionate about it. I know I
Mhm.
won't. I mean, I can read a book and I can tell you, I mean, I read books. I started reading a brand new series of books, and I'm absolutely in love with the book. And I was actually mad that I didn't finish the entire book this weekend. It's a 507-page book, and I was
Wow.
pissed off that I didn't finish it. You know, that's how much I read, and I can read very quickly. But it's the point is that there's significance behind that, and it gives me my pleasure. That's one of my passions. But I also have my passion for my business, which is why I've been in it for 33 damn years. I have a passion. But if I didn't have a passion, I wouldn't have been able to embrace the opportunity when it was presented to me to actually, which is the opportunity that set off my entire, turn that trajectory and brought me to where I am now. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to see that had I not had that passion. I have the passion for reading. When I'm reading a book, if I'm not interested in it, I literally will return it. I cannot read it. If it does not pique me, if it doesn't grab me in the beginning, I can't do it. When it comes to finding your inner strength, finding that breath work to help you through things, you have to be passionate about yourself and the want to actually better yourself, because that's all we're going to do when we take, depending upon whether you take the red pill or the blue pill, like you said in the beginning.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Sam, I would like to thank you for coming on to my podcast. I do appreciate it. Why don't you tell the audience where they can find you and and the name of the book again was The Overcome the Overwhelm,
Yeah.
and that's on Amazon. I'm just taking some notes here.
Yeah.
But tell everybody where we can find you, and then whenever I post this to Spotify, YouTube, and to LinkedIn, once it actually gets done, I will put in a link where everybody can actually find you.
Yeah, absolutely. SamKabert.com, SamKabert.com, KABERT.com, SamKabert.com. And that's my website. Everything else is right there. If you want to join the Breath Club, that's my weekly free breathwork sessions. That's SamKabert.com/club.
Okay. Thank you again for coming on. I do
Yeah.
appreciate your time tonight. And I know it was a little bit of an adventure for us to actually get face to face here.
We're
So,
here. Yeah, I appreciate it, Kathleen. Thanks so much. Fun conversation. I know this is gonna land with the people ready to hear it and take action. So thanks so much.
not a problem. And for all of my audience, remember, see your strength, recognize your significance, and embrace your opportunity. Have a great evening.